Hello and welcome into Tobacco Road and Abroad. My name's Gareth Parsons, joined by Aiden Moore. Aiden, we have quite the special show today. It's our Super Bowl special. I mean, obviously we're going to
Absolutely.
cover some college basketball, some MMA, maybe even some soccer, since it is a short agenda tonight. But,
hmm
we've got the Super Bowl. We only get one of these a year. So,
Yes.
any thoughts you'd like to lead off with?
Well, first off, it's the matchup that we deserve, not the one that we wanted. Kansas City going up against Philadelphia. Uh, my main takeaway that I want to kind of harp on is first off, I just don't see a world in which Kansas City loses, in my opinion, just because I'm sorry, I think the dynasty is set, and I think the Chiefs are going to go for the three-peat. It's never been done before, but I think history is going to be made on Sunday night, and we're going to be seeing the three-peat Kansas City Chiefs. The Philadelphia is a very strong offense. I love their rushing attack. Saquon Barkley, he deserves a Super Bowl ring, in my opinion. If people want to ask who I'm rooting for Saquon Barkley in particular. I think with the level of season that he's had this year, and also just the adversity that he went through with the Giants, finding a new home in Philadelphia. That's been my favorite narratives this year. But I just think Kansas City's offense has just kind of proved itself, especially in the AFC Championship game, in my opinion. And Kansas City's defense has done very well throughout the season. I personally think it's been their defense that has won them most of their games this season, and they've been really riding on their defense, and also some people call it dark magic. I call it just winner's luck. When you keep on winning, you're going to find ways to be even more lucky, and that's the Kansas City motto, I believe. Uh, just overall, I just see a win for Kansas City, and that's kind of my main takeaway and my main point that I wanted to bring in my prediction. But what do you have to say, Gareth?
Obviously, it is, like I said, the matchup we deserve. For the fourth year in a row, the colors of the Super Bowl logo have correctly predicted the teams in it. I know last year didn't really count because the team was not purple, but people say the purple on the logo last year was the purple on Taylor Swift's dress from the album cover. But, hey, I don't know. I'll take it. It's something, it's a trend that's currently, you know, in favor, just like the one. I think it's the away team usually wins every year, right?
Yeah.
Or wins most years, which I feel like is fair because they alternate AFC, NFC, and you're usually not going to have, outside of the Chiefs, you're usually not going to have a conference win the same every year. Being two conferences, there's a 50% chance either side wins. So it does make sense that, kind of, well, or does it? Not really. I guess in most years, since it does alternate every year, well, no, that does make sense. If it alternates every year, who's the white team? In most Super Bowls, the a different conference wins the next year, so that does make sense.
Yeah.
That does make sense. I forget who's wearing white this year.
Kansas City.
Kansas City. So the odds do favor them in that. But what I will say is the Eagles are in green. And I don't think the last time the Eagles played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, or were the Chiefs in white then too? I forget.
Yeah, the Chiefs were in white last time that they played Philadelphia. Last year they were in red against San Francisco, but they still won, I believe.
Yeah.
Um,
But for me, the Chiefs offense has struggled heavily this season. It has not been their strong point. I will say the Chiefs did kind of figure it out offensive wise against the Bills last week. And I know the Chiefs offense has kind of struggled to score a decent amount of points this season, but in every game, I think they've at least reached 30 points, but it's been significantly close. I will say the Chiefs defense has done a good job holding other opposing teams under 30, except for ours truly, the Carolina Panthers, the only team outside of, I think, Buffalo to score more than 30 against the Chiefs. So, bright future ahead for us. Just looking at the Eagles stats for me, I think they're just a fundamentally sound team, and I know people like to talk about the black magic. I know I was watching a UConn game earlier today called by Gus Johnson, and he was talking about at halftime how he's like, it's really easy to win when you get phantom PI calls. Like, I did not expect that out of such a highly respected, sports, personality. And I know, some of the more ones who are, I guess, are more animated and, they're more of a character than, you always think of Gus Johnson. No, I wouldn't say level-headed. Level-headed is not the right word because he's up and down and excited with it. But, I always thought he was just kind of I don't want to say not professional, but I didn't expect a comment like that out of him because there have been hits where if I've seen egregious calls and Gus Johnson's like, oh, I don't know about that, Johnny. But tonight he's like, yeah, when you get phantom PI calls, wow, I thought it was just the fans. But, if Gus Johnson's in on something, I'd say unless a Big Ten team's playing someone who's not in the Big Ten, if it's two Big Ten teams, he's pretty impartial.
Yeah.
But, if it's the Big Ten versus anyone else, but, that's because he's a Big Ten guy.
Mm-hmm.
But he did say, he goes, I do love me some Big East basketball. But that's aside the point. I do think there is, that winner's luck, as you like to talk about. I don't want to call it, black magic either. But I just think this Philadelphia defense is too consistent. The Chiefs' offense is very prone to struggle. And if the Chiefs' offense is struggling, especially with the fact that this Philadelphia defense is as stout as it is, nothing to do with Cooper DeJean at all. But I think this Philadelphia defense, regardless of what Kansas City offense shows up, whether they're clicking or not, I think they're going to lock them up. And I say, I know Travis Kelce's a tight end, and I know Cooper DeJean's an outside corner. Put DeJean on Kelce. Mans isn't catching anything. Put DeJean on Kelce. But I do think I honestly have the Eagles in this one. I think it will be a low-scoring affair. But like I said, the Eagles in the last game, despite being a run-first offense, have shown they have the explosive upside potential even while focusing on running the ball. They were able to drop 55 points. And like I said last time, getting blown out and the other team scoring 55 when you throw the ball, yeah, you got your ass kicked, but it wasn't like you got physically dominated. When a team like that runs the ball and scores 55 points, that's just you got your entire being kicked. It wasn't just your ass kicked. They kicked your head in. They curb stomped you on the side of the road while everyone watched. And I'm not saying the Commanders didn't play well, but I'm talking that Philadelphia offense versus that Commanders defense. That was just, curb stomping. I'm not going to use the other word I wanted to use, but, so I'm trying to make this more professional. But I've got Philadelphia. I think it will be a physical battle. And I think the key to Philadelphia here is their offensive line is going to have to come out aggressive, and it's going to have to put that Kansas City defensive line on its heels. That Kansas City defensive line, for me, was the kind of deciding factor in that Bills game. They were giving that Bills offensive line, who's been really good all season, kind of fits. And the Bills did find ways around it. But I think that defensive line of Kansas City did just enough to turn the tide in their favor. It wasn't the sole reason Kansas City won in that playoff game against Buffalo, but I do think it was the deciding factor because it was able to disrupt Josh Allen's rhythm, disrupt his timing, just kind of disrupt everything. And even when passes looked surefire, it was able to kind of disrupt the flow of the play. And what usually would have been, there's a blitz coming, but Buffalo has a wide open receiver slipping out the backside of the backfield. Like, they'd slow that down and, stop it from like a 3-yard gain as opposed to what that would normally be like a 20-yard gain because they slipped out of the backfield unopposed. But like I said, I've got Philadelphia. As long as they can take care of the ball and that defense keeps playing lights out and lockdown, I think I've got them here. I do see a world in which both teams win. It's a Super Bowl. Both teams obviously have a chance. I do see a world in which both teams win. I think for Kansas City, the name of the game is you cannot let that Philadelphia offense get into a rhythm, especially that offensive line. If that once that offensive line gets into a rhythm, particularly, setting up the run to set up the pass and then using the pass to set up the run again, if you let them get into any sort of rhythm, I think that game's going to not get away from Kansas City score-wise, but at least momentum-wise.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like with this – sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I feel like the big takeaway for me also is the power of Philadelphia versus the speed of Kansas City. Like, I'm going to have to disagree with you on it being a low-scoring matchup. In my opinion, this is going to be it's going to be a point showcase, but that doesn't mean that the defense is going to be lacking, in my opinion. I do believe points off turnovers is going to be a factor in this, as it has been a factor in the playoffs, as we have seen. But just Philadelphia's power is going to be something that Kansas City needs to really find ways to stop. And as likewise, Philadelphia is going to need to be able to find ways to stop the speed of Kansas City. Very fast wide receiver core, and Mahomes being able to step outside the pocket and make plays with his. I wouldn't say he's like the fastest quarterback, but he is definitely a mobile quarterback that throws first, in my opinion. And I think that's going to be something that's very important in this matchup, which is sort of why I'm leaning more towards Kansas City in the fact that I think as the season has progressed, we have seen more and more speed from them. And I think power is great, especially in the NFL, but you can very easily, especially with long playoff runs, lose that power and lose that edge.
Yeah, and turnovers will be key here. One thing that I do think will tip it in the favor of Philadelphia is Philadelphia in the playoffs currently has a plus 10 turnover difference, 4 interceptions and 6 forced fumbles while giving away none. Kansas City, similar. They haven't forced any takeaways, but they've only given up one, which I think, like you said, turnovers is going to be the biggest thing here. Kansas City doesn't force many, but they also don't give the ball away. So there's no real need for them to take it away. Eagles, on the other hand, in this postseason, even in the season, they had a total of 26 forced turnovers, 13 interceptions, 13 fumbles. But like I said, it's going to be about, you said, I think regardless of I think it's going to be low, you think it's going to be high. I do think turnovers are going to be a big deal in this game, particularly because this playoffs, I mean, more than any other playoffs, I'm going to be honest. I feel like in the NFL playoffs, turnovers are a big deal. But this year, it's felt like, you grow up and, you hear like back when, the NFL wasn't as points heavy, we heard our parents talk about, oh, turnovers, like, that can ruin a game. And they can, but I feel like certain teams when we were growing up, it was like they were okay with turning the ball over as long as they had as many touchdowns as turnovers or at least one more touchdown than turnovers. They're like with the offensive showcases that we've seen in the NFL in recent years. Like Tom Brady, no matter how many interceptions he threw, just seemed to find a way to get it done. Like he'd have a full interception game in the Super Bowl. I don't know if he did, but he'd have a full interception game in like a tight league, in like a game that meant a lot that year, but he'd somehow still find a way. Or there's been games where Mahomes will throw 3 interceptions, but he still finds a way.
Yeah.
That really has not been the case in these playoffs. It's been usually the team who protects the ball more, the team who protects the quarterback more, has been the one that moves on. So, like I said, I do see it going either way, but you said, Aiden, I think the turnovers here are going to be a big thing. Just who takes care of the football. Is Kansas City going to be able to get Philadelphia to turn it over? Who knows? But
I think they are. And I think Kansas City is going to be able to limit the amount of turnovers because, number one, I think the caliber of competition that Kansas City has faced is not on the same level of the caliber of competition that Philadelphia was able to capitalize turnovers off of. If we're looking at the playoffs, the Philadelphia Eagles played, I believe, the Packers. Then what was Rams and the Commanders. Commanders was like I love the Commanders, led by a very young quarterback. Uh, Pack with the Packers. Jordan Love is very Brett Favre-esque in my opinion, and is more of a gunslinger. So I believe Green Bay is more susceptible to turnovers. And in the Los Angeles Rams game, that was a very snowy game, and I felt like turnovers were like the playoff pathway that Philadelphia had. I felt like kind of gave more opportunity for turnovers than Kansas City, where Kansas City, yes, they played a very good Texans team. They've also played the Bills, and I feel like those are teams that you're not really going to be getting as many turnovers off of.
Yeah, those teams certainly do take care of the ball a lot more than either the Rams. Even Stafford, to a certain extent, can play like a gunslinger at times. Not quite with like the reckless abandon that you see from Jordan Love, but like, and even then, he's not that reckless. He's just he likes to take chances with his passes. Like, I wouldn't say
Yeah.
he's reckless, but you get what I'm
But
saying.
the LA Rams turnover that I really think about in the game that I felt like turned the game more into the Philadelphia Eagles' favor was Kyrie Williams' fumble, which that was a very snowy game, and like Kyrie Williams, I love him personally as a running back, Notre Dame legend. He's just not on the same level yet as a Saquon Barkley, where like he's like Saquon Barkley is going to be protecting the ball a little bit more. Kyrie Williams, I know they're about kind of the same age. It's just Kyrie Williams just doesn't have the same level of like playoff or like team experience as Saquon Barkley does with his time at the Giants and his time with the Eagles.
Yeah, it'll be a good game. I know it's 6:30 on Sunday in New Orleans. I'm curious to see what role Jameis Winston's going to play in this game. Whether they're going to have him on, as like an on-field reporter, is he going to be up in the booth? Because a lot of the NFL's marketing has been around Jameis Winston. Is he from there, or is he from? Where is he from? Because I know he's been kind of like on the ground, taking everyone, like taking the NFL crew around
He was from
Louisiana.
Florida, I believe, but like I think he was like
He was on the
north.
Saints though. So
Yeah, he
that's why he
was.
was on the Saints.
Yeah,
So that's
he
probably why
was.
he's showing everyone the spots there.
Yeah, but
Because he's
he's very much like part of like southern, like deep South culture, though.
like Cajun culture, like they are
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
New
yeah,
Orleans.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Because there are parts of Florida that are very Cajun. Like I have a friend who I swam with that province. I'm not going to name drop him on here just because but like he was even in Texas. There are parts of East Texas that are like he's like where I live in Texas. He's like, yes, I'm from Texas. My town says Texas, but he's like it's culturally very Louisiana bayou culture, and
Yeah.
I think he's in an area of Florida where like that bayou culture just kind of extends along that kind of Gulf Coast, kind of meshes with that Gulf Coast culture because Jameis was taking people around. He was getting like beignets. He had a W beignet because he eats
Yeah,
W's. That's like his thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
He was taking to get like crab legs. There's like a crab boil, and of course there are
He's also a
plenty
big
crab legs.
turnover guy.
Yeah, no apple turnovers. He
Yeah.
took him into that. He played into that too. Like I think he secretly has a burner on Instagram somewhere where he sees all the memes, and I think he just loves leaning into it.
Yeah.
But like I said, we have our quarterback in Bryce. I like that we have a league where he's going to find a home.
Hmm.
And I think I forget who it was, but Patrick Mahomes. He was either talking to Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, or Patrick Mahomes, and they were like in a press conference or working trying to find Jameis Winston a new team. He's like, yo, you got any landing spots for me? Like they like stopped the press conference and they're like going through all the teams in their head of like who needs a quarterback. And like,
Where do we
wow.
want to put Jameis Winston?
I think it's funny that even like Patrick Mahomes and then people are in on the Jameis Winston memes. Like
You
they're
know
in
what?
on it and they want to see him play quarterback in this league.
You know what? I'll say this. You know what? With the direction that the team I'm thinking is going, I know it would never happen because they already have a quarterback, but put him on the Dallas Cowboys. Listen, Dak's going to get injured. Put Jameis Winston in. Like,
The
I
horse
think
is
that's
ready
a.
to go.
No. Like, I would love to see Jameis Winston in a Dallas Cowboys uniform.
I know they're America's team, but they're kind of too wine and cheese for someone like him.
Nah, but like I think it like with how they like handled like their coaching hiring, like all their fans are like leaving ship right now. Come on, they got to throw them a bone.
I
But in
know.
like a more serious, maybe like Geno Smith coming back to the Seahawks. Like
I don't know.
seeing,
I'm trying to think. I'm looking up what team that they recommended for Jameis Winston.
I could see him in maybe a Seahawks uniform.
Who was it? What they were saying? Um. Oh, I know what it was. Saquon recommended him for the Giants.
No, Saquon's too evil for that.
But think about the personalities they've had at quarterback there. They've had Daniel Jones, just like kind of the
You know what? I
bumbling
and
idiot. They've
unfortunately I
had
do think I do
Tommy
see that
Cutlets.
happening. I do
They've
see
had
that
Tommy
happening.
Cutlets. Now
Tommy
they're getting.
Cutlets.
Now they're gonna have the horses ready for battle. The horses.
Victory comes from the Lord.
When did he turn into a preacher? Because in like
No, he's been really into leaning into like his spiritual side, like ever since getting into the NFL.
he got LASIK eye surgery, and dude's been a decent quarterback ever since.
Yeah. I
One of
can't
the last.
believe like his Heisman season of FSU. I could just always remember seeing him like whenever he would throw a turnover, he would be like,
Well, they even made a joke about it on Gruden's QB camp. Now, who you going to on this pass? Oh, that's Rashad. Who you going to on this pass? That's Rashad. Well, Jameis, you see here, over half of your interceptions came from when you throw into Rashad. So, do you think? Well, he's the only one I really can see sometimes. I shit you not. He said that, or he said something along those lines. He's like, sometimes he goes, like the original, the original meme before everyone started hitting on the Chiefs was when Tyreek was still on the Chiefs. I don't even think they had won a Super Bowl. The whole meme was "fuck it, Tyreek" down there somewhere, and it's a
yeah,
picture of Mahomes throwing like this,
yeah.
like eyes squinting. Like the original meme for that wasn't Mahomes. It wasn't like any sort of gunslinger like Rivers or Favre. The original meme that would go around on Instagram about screw it, fuck it, they down there somewhere, was a picture of Jameis squinting after an interception, going, fuck it, Rashad was down there somewhere. Because that's Rashad Green.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still in the NFL or not, but he was always a solid receiver at FSU. Let me actually check on Rashad Green to see where he is. Not Rashad Penny. Rashad Green is a wide receiver for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I really thought bro was going to be a Pro Bowler. But after his short stint in the NFL, he was
Sign him to the Giants and sign Jameis Winston.
He was on the Jaguars from 2015 to 2018, but he's been at the Saskatchewan Roughriders as a practice squad member since 2020. I really thought he was going to be something. I'll admit it. I was a Rashad Green believer. I'll admit it. But,
We need to bring back Gruden's QB camp. Like I know Barstool has him, but Barstool needs to make like Gruden's QB camp again.
I know. One thing we can do on the off season is be like, damn, I was an ex-believer. Now they're in NFL Europe 2.0, which actually is a thing. We did bring up last episode. NFL Europe is a thing now again. It's not like 9 out of the 12 teams are in Germany and Austria though, but still, hey, football's back. Anything else to add for the Super Bowl? I mean, I didn't really see much from the Pro Bowl that we could talk on. I know. Well, they had wide receivers playing quarterback in the Pro Bowl. I get it's just fun at this point, and they're out there like dicking around. Like
I'm gonna
Baker
be
Mayfield
real.
was playing offensive line. Like
I didn't watch the Pro Bowl.
I didn't either. I was too busy just like college basketballing. Like
Yeah, I was too busy watching UNC lose to Duke.
that game was painful.
That's a lie. I didn't even watch that. Like I turned that shit off.
I fell asleep. Was gonna watch it. Like we had a meet this weekend. I came home. I was like we had a swim meet where I coach. And like I came home, I was tired. I like half fell asleep on the couch for 30 minutes. I'm like, shit, the game's on. So I like turned it on. I'm like, oh,
Game's not
and
on.
turned it like
Only
the
one
game is
team's
not
playing.
on. Turned it off. So yeah. Shall we move on, or is there you got anything else
Yeah,
to say about
I mean, we can move on to college basketball because, like, I brought it up, but UNC lost to Duke. I'm not gonna lie, guys, it's over. Like, I'm not liking our chances for March Madness. I would have to see what bracketology's saying, but honestly, I don't care what bracketology says. Like, I have us being out right now, just with how the schedule's looking and uh, like the caliber of play that has been performed. Like I'm just gonna say that like it's not looking good for UNC, and Hubert Davis definitely is going to be like needing to answer some questions. Right now, bracketology has us not as the first four out, but the next four out with Pittsburgh, and we play Pittsburgh uh, this week, and we already lost to them. So like I'm not gonna lie, it's not looking particularly good to be a Tar Heel right now. Main takeaways from the game, I mean, what can I say? Duke just had really the better team, and they showed up. Um, just overall, just kind of, I would say, like at least domination on the in the first half. Like UNC was able to at least kind of scrape together something in the second half, but just looking at the stats, like it kind of says it all. Um, let me try to pull this up. Yeah, I mean, Ian Jackson was limited to 8 points. That was kind of like a key to losing right there. We said it in the podcast before, like Ian Jackson was going to have a great game in order to really uh, pull one together for UNC. That didn't happen. RJ Davis able to score 12 points, just not being able to really cut it. But shout out to Drake Powell for on the bench. He tied for the most points scored by a UNC player that game, tying RJ Davis for 12. But overall, just the Duke starting lineup just kind of had like an absolute monster of game. Cooper Flag, 21 points. Knepple, how do I say his last name? Knepple scoring 22. Tyrese Proctor, 17. Like, just the Duke starting five, just absolute, just bigger, shooting better, able to get the rebounds. Like, just overall domination by Duke. I can't say much on that. Like, it's just not looking good for UNC. So, I mean, I'm honestly like I'm kind of checking out of the season right now. Like I'm saying, better luck next year because it's not looking good right now. But Gareth, any games you want to talk about?
Not really. NC State continues their 8 game slide. It's just like I said, it's not looking good for State either. my thing is when NC State has horrible years, it's usually because the offense can't get a shot up. The issue this year is we can get shots up and like amazing looks. It's just none of them are fucking falling. And I know there's old heads still on Twitter going, if you take good shots, they'll fall. Okay, but like we're kind of past the point where like even if the shots start falling today and we win out, we still don't make the tournament without winning the ACC tournament. Like it's as it is, we're currently not even like slated to make the ACC tournament because now this year with all the fucking added teams, there's like you can now miss the ACC tournament apparently.
What?
Which that's a whole no this year because we have 19. It's too many teams. The NCAA said we had to like have a cutoff. I think it's bottom 4 or bottom 3 don't make it. So it's like college baseball, which ironically, for college baseball, where we have a similar number of teams, everyone makes it now this year, starting this year. Everyone makes the ACC tournament in college baseball, which is a step in the right direction, but it's a step in the right direction after we already took a step back. Because the whole point of March Madness was everyone's season's still alive except for the bottom 4 Ivy League teams. Now with conference realignment, there's teams that don't make the Big Ten tournament. There's teams that don't make the ACC tournament now. And it's just like, and yes, the ACC is having a down year, which we'll get to a little later. But like, I'm just like, that just doesn't feel right. Like, the whole point is, yes, and I guess, like, I know the whole argument, like, well, if you want to keep playing, win more games or something like that, which I get. Okay. Like, I get that argument, like, win games.
Like, nobody's going to say, like, Mickey Mouse ACC championship game because, like, freaking Miami didn't make the ACC tournament.
Yeah, no one's going to say that, but, like, it just kind of, it
diminishes the spirit.
It does. Yeah, it diminishes the spirit. Like, it's not something that it doesn't feel right. So, but I don't know. It's just like the frustrating part is that the shots are there. It's just they're not falling, which I guess that can be frustrating. And, the superstar 3-point shooter we thought we were going to have this season, apparently the surgery, Mike James, who is supposed to be a small forward, it's like a knockdown 3-point shooter, like his surgery, to kind of clean stuff up in his knee apparently did not go as planned, but they didn't decide to say that till now in the season. We were told we'd have him by the second week in November, and it's now February, and they finally ruled him out for the rest of the year. Our other big, Brandon Huntley Hatfield's been battling injuries all season, has kind of been not playing well as a result. So this year for NC State's basically been like the year of transfers getting hurt, which, injury bug and all. But what I will say is the whole point of this year for Keats's extension was I would have been happy if we just made the tournament, even if we lost first round. Yes, I'd be disappointed, but like we weren't going to follow up last year with the Final Four run unless we cleaned up in the portal, and we didn't. But the whole point of him was to at least like make the tournament, and we may not even make the ACC tournament at this point. And I get the injury bug and all, but I really I was a little worried when I didn't feel like Keats took the portal as seriously as he should have. Yes, he retained a decent amount of talent from that Final Four run team, but it wasn't like major players. It was like supporting roles who, yes, would give us amazing minutes. Ben Middlebrooks, our center. Integral, if there was one player that we needed to return this season out of any of those people who still had eligibility, it was Ben Middlebrooks.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Diarra, I think losing him to the NBA draft, who I forget who he got drafted by. And I know he's not currently in the NBA, but he's like in the system somewhere. Like he was a decent forward. We're very much missing him. But I will say one product that I do feel this year does feel a bit different than that 1 year, historically low year back in 2021 for NC State. What feels different is there is kind of like a little bit of hope. Like Marcus Hill, but he hasn't played a lot until this year. He's kind of really come into his own and shown that next year for his final year of eligibility, if we're able to retain him, could be our big scorer guy next year. That is one thing that I will say I'm hopeful for next year. Another guy, we have once again struck gold with these French Canadian players. Last year it was Mohamed Diarra in that Final Four run. This year, this guy isn't Mohamed Diarra level yet, but in the Goot game, in the Cal game that we lost, while those were losses, the bright spot in those games was Ishmael Diouf. He's a French Canadian player. He decided to give up playing in the Canadian version of the NBA to come play college basketball. And I don't know why he hasn't been getting minutes. I don't know if there's certain NIL stipulations to start certain players or like certain minute stipulations in their NIL deals, but there are certain players on this NC State team that I feel like deserve more minutes and have been bright spots. Trey Parker, John Shire, the coach of Duke, who hasn't lost a game in 3 months, goes, if there was a way for me to get him, I'd get him, because he's like, if you're able to keep him, he's like, keeps that as the face of your program for the next 4 years. If you can keep him out of the draft and out of the portal, Trey Parker. So I think that is a good 3 to base our team around for next year, including Breon Pass, who could be another kind of, that sixth man. I think next year's looking bright, but Keats is going to have to clean up in the portal. I know fans are wanting Keats gone, but if I'm going to be honest, as frustrated as I am with Keats, he's earned those 2 years after last year. He earned that 2-year extension. Like, even if that state team was going to make the NCAA tournament already without that ACC tournament, he was earned that extension. So like that's something you can't take away from him. I feel like any coach to win 5 games in 5 days and then make a Final Four run when you're not supposed to, that would warrant an extension. Maybe the donors at Carolina may not happen, but if Hubert were somehow able to do that this year, I think unfortunately he'd get an extension. I don't think you'd be like, you know me, I was kind of frustrated when Keith would I was happy we won the ACC, but like I was talking to you and I was kind of like, oh shit, here we go again after Keats won the ACC. I even told Aiden back in February, I'm like, Keats is on the outs, but I'm like, watch his ass save his fucking job.
Yeah.
And like win the ACC and win the national championship. Like I even told my dad that. And like obviously my dad and I were like really drunk after the ACC championship game, obviously celebrating. But one of the conversations my dad and I had was like, oh shit, here we go again. Like we're gonna be asked for the next 2 years before we can get rid of him. Not that I want to get rid of Keats, great guy. I think he's a good basketball coach, but sometimes I just don't think things come together. I do think he belongs to the Division I level. I want him to stay at NC State. I want him to do well and stay. Yeah. This isn't I want Kevin Keats gone. This is I want him to figure it out, because last year he showed us glimpses of what happens when Keats figures it out. He can have strokes of brilliance. And I think that's where some Carolina fans are, is like a lot of them want Hubert gone, but I feel like some Carolina fans are at the point where they just want this team to go well, do well. Yeah. If it's with Hubert, that's great. If it's without Hubert, that's, not as great. But I know some UNC fans, they're like, Hubert at his best gets us a national championship. But the issue is, unlike Roy, Hubert at his worst misses the tournament.
Yes.
Roy may have missed the tournament a few times, but he at least gets them into the NIT. Or at least they're like first 4 out, and it's like, it's a down year where he had all freshmen and he wasn't really able to clean up in the transfers. Like even before the portal, I felt like transferring was a lot bigger in basketball. There were a lot of JUCO transfers that would pan out really well at State, Duke, Carolina, not Duke, but State and Carolina. There'd be a lot of JUCO transfers that were decent. Mm-hmm. But Roy would have a down year, and it wouldn't be because of poor management. It would be because, well, shit, we had 6 freshmen. They'd show flashes of brilliance. They may have not a great ACC record, but they'd show flashes of potential.
Yeah.
Or they'd at least come close to making the tournament. There'd at least have been an argument for them to be in. Whereas, I think the point where a lot of Carolina fans are at is, if UNC keeps going at this rate, there may not be an argument for him to get into the tournament.
Yeah.
The last time Hubert missed the tournament, there was some argument for them to be in. 17-10 is not the worst in the world. We've seen worse make the tournament. In an at-large position.
Mm-hmm.
There was an Oklahoma team that was 16-12 and that's just because they wanted to watch fucking Trae Young. I was heated. That year, NC State had like 7 quad 1 wins. Like, we beat Duke once. We like swept a ranked Syracuse. We split with a ranked Clemson. We split with a ranked Carolina. And I was pissed. Because we went on a run. We didn't make it to the finals, but like we made it to like the semifinals of the ACC tournament. And I was pissed. We were one of the first 4 out, and one of the last 4 in was a fucking 17-12 Oklahoma that lost in a play-in game. I was livid. I'm not saying NC State would have won like the national championship that year or anything, but like you get it. Like, had Carolina been left out for that with several quad 1 wins, you wouldn't be happy.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
But that's kind of where I am with State. I'll touch on Providence a little before we kind of go into the general. Providence, our best player, Bryce Hopkins, still has finally been ruled out. Like last Friday, after we recorded, is officially ruled out for the rest of the season. When in the 2 games where he came back for Providence, it was found that he re-injured his ACL, so we won't be seeing him anytime soon. In Providence's close loss to St. John's over the weekend, Providence went on the road to St. John's, took him to the wire. All that separated Providence and St. John's was a Kadari Richmond mid-range jumper at the buzzer. The bright spot for the Providence Friars last weekend was Abdul Rahim. He's kind of caught fire as of late, and I know I've talked about how Providence, they really were kind of a knockdown 3-point shooter away from being really good. They took number 12 St. John's to the wire. And I thought, man, I know that's a loss, but that could be a turning point for our season if he figures it out. Like, he knocked down 7 threes against St. John's. I'm like, shit, if we could figure it out in the back half and clean up in the Big East tournament, this could be good. But in the final minutes of the St. John's games, lo and behold, who tears their ACL? Abdul Rahim. Providence does not have any scorers left, at least consistent scorers. Providence recently played a game against Creighton. It was a hard-fought game. That Creighton offense, in my opinion, is really easy to stop. But like I said, the same thing with Marquette. To stop Creighton and Marquette, 2 different styles of offense. You stop them 2 completely different ways, but it starts with being disciplined. And Providence could not be disciplined when it came to stopping Creighton. Creighton, you cannot aggressively double. You cannot double Kalkbrenner. It's like Zach Edey. You've just got to let him do what he does. You can double him to force him to pick up his dribble, but then you have to shift. You have to back out of it. And like that's the point of doubling is it's not always necessarily to force a stop or a steal. It's to force whoever has the ball to pick up their dribble. And then you back out of it as quickly as possible because you've got their dribble picked up. And, it's easy to guard someone when they don't have their dribble. So that's the whole point of the double team. The issue is we try and double Kalkbrenner. Kalkbrenner being, the amazing passer he is, while also being like 7'2". He's able to pick out a guard on the perimeter like Stephen Ashworth. And that's one thing that Greg McDermott prides himself on in these Creighton teams is he's got the big guy in the middle. But what he wants knockdown shooters who shoot above 40% from 3 on the outside. That's one thing. Even before Ryan Kalkbrenner, when he was a perimeter team like Marquette, his whole thing was he wanted guys who were 40% or above from beyond 3. But when you pair that with someone like a 7-footer like Ryan Kalkbrenner who's that efficient in the paint, you've got a deadly combo right there. And I know this is a Creighton team that was supposed to be a national championship contender, but they lost one of their key players. They picked up a nice transfer, one of the best players in college basketball from last year, Pop Isaacs, who was a really, really, really good player from Texas Tech. But unfortunately, like all the really good players as of late, tears his ACL. Pop Isaacs out for the year. 2023, 2024, and 2025 for me, this is like the era of ACL tearing for college basketball. The amount of players' careers, not years ended, but like the amount of players who've at least tweaked or injured it has been crazy. Tyler Kolek last season, he didn't tear it, but he tweaked it and missed a good part of Big East play for Marquette. It didn't really harm them, but it didn't really help them either. It made a lot of games close that should not have been close for Marquette last year. Obviously, Bryce Hopkins, now Pop Isaacs. These are really good. Like Bryce Hopkins, before he was hurt, that Providence team, it wasn't, they weren't a national championship contender, but they were in dark horse talks after thrashing that Marquette team that went to the Elite Eight against NC State. Like there were talks that that Providence team was going to win the Big East. They were the ones to get that were going to challenge UConn, and then Bryce Hopkins got hurt, and then the whole issue became who's going to replace those 25 points a game that Bryce Hopkins puts up. Ultimately, Providence wasn't able to replace that, but like there are these players. I don't know. I know it's just likely a coincidence that recently just all these ACL tears are going on. But back to Providence. Providence, you did not lose that Creighton game because you're missing Abdul Rahim and Bryce Hopkins. That was the best I've seen Providence play, missing Bryce Hopkins and missing Devin Carter from last year. They looked on the offense end. They looked competent. They could hit shots. Jaden Pierre finally looked like the player he could be. Jaden Pierre was a lot of where my frustration of this Providence team centered around. I've talked to you about this, Aiden. Jaden Pierre, lightning in a bottle freshman year. Like it was, oh my God. He was inconsistent, but that's freshman. That's freshman in college basketball. They have games where they take over. Like they play like a senior and they take over and it's their game. And then they have games where it's like, shit, did he even play? That was Jaden Pierre's freshman year. It was Ed Cooley's last year. Like, we've talked about in here. Once they found out Ed Cooley was leaving, the team went on a slide. And that was before the public knew. The team went on a slide. But that one bright spot during that slide? Jaden Pierre. Kim English's first year in Providence. Jaden Pierre doesn't really show any flashes. Kind of lackluster sophomore season. He played well. The shots just weren't falling. I felt bad for the guy. This talk isn't to shit on him. I felt bad for the guy. He was generating open looks. He was hustling on defense. It's just the shots were just not falling. He'd get his points in the paint, like he'd get it done in the paint, like on layups and drives, and he'd find people left and right. It's just his shot, that step back three or that three coming off the screen just wasn't falling. So felt bad for the guy. This year, it felt like he kind of took a step back until this Creighton game. He kind of took over. He was the reason we were in that game. He was splashing threes left and right. But like I said, Providence played really, really undisciplined defense, which is something you cannot do against this Creighton team. And ultimately, they ended up losing. Like I said, like Providence, I don't think they're going to make the NCAA tournament. They at least will make their conference tournament. But barring a miracle run, I don't think it's possible. Their two tops, there are two scorers who seem to have figured it out are out for the year. So who knows? With that, I think we'll just move into general games that kind of have caught our eyes over the last couple of days. I know there's a lot I want to talk about, particularly in the Big East, that have been, I think, our national championship and, March Madness shaping games. But I don't know. Is there any particular games you want to start with? I know there's some in the Big Ten that you and I wanted to look at as well. So I'm going to let you.
First, I want to kind of bring it to the SEC. First game that I wanted to mention, I kind of wanted to give a shout out to Tennessee because Tennessee just flipped the script against Florida. Tennessee coming out with a dominant win against Florida, 64-44, just absolutely putting it on in the second half. Just a very dominant win for Tennessee, seeing Chaz Lanier scored 19 points and Jordan Gainley 16 points. Just overall, really solid field goal shooting percentage by those two players, and just kind of reinvigorating my hype on Tennessee. I was kind of low on them after they lost to Florida previously this year, but kind of flipping the script, I feel like that's something that's worth mentioning. Other games that I saw that I think are worth a mention, Auburn continuing their winning ways, getting a solid win against Ole Miss. Just Auburn is a team that like I don't want to face. And they're continuing their dominant streak. Just right now, like as the uh, polls indicate, right now it's Auburn and Duke that are the teams to kind of beat right now. And right now, I kind of have Auburn looking like they're going to be most likely making a very deep run in March Madness. Uh, Look into other SEC games. Alabama getting a very, very big win over Georgia, 90-69. Just absolute clinic when it came to shooting, and just big win for Alabama. USC getting the upset against Michigan State. That was a crazy win. I am not high. I was not high on USC at all, and I was very high on Michigan State, but just showing that Big Ten madness is something that's very interesting, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how Michigan State responds. Because now I kind of have questions when it comes to their ability to win like closer games, especially in these close games that you should be winning by a lot. Like, how is that going to shape up in March Madness when you're going to be playing close games against teams that you should be beating? That's going to be something. Uh, Arkansas versus Kentucky. Arkansas getting the win, 89-79. That was a pretty interesting game. Like, I wasn't expecting such a like I guess performance from Arkansas, but just uh, very. Do you have any takeaways from like the games that I mentioned, or like?
Not really. The only one I will say, Michigan State, I kind of have had iffy thoughts about them. Yeah, they had a decent non-conference, but one thing I've been seeing kind of around the like kind of the hot take has been that hasn't really been proven until now is that them and Oregon were kind of the two teams that were kind of suspect for me. Once Big Ten play kind of started, it was they've kind of been exposed. Now, I wouldn't say Michigan State's been exposed to the extent Oregon has been, but like I said, Michigan State, I mean, Tom Izzo teams know how to get it done. And I'm sure this Michigan State team will end up in the tournament. I just don't think this Michigan State team was top 10 material as was kind of touted. So I think they're a ranked team, and I think they're definitely top 25. And they're definitely a lock for the tournament for me. But honestly, for me, they belong more around the 21, 22 mark. But like you said, obviously the two teams to beat right now are Duke and Auburn. Auburn's up and rolling. Tennessee did flip the script on Florida, but it's a home conference game. Tennessee is more legit than I thought they were, but I still have serious doubts. Like, I definitely don't think like they're definitely not the best team in the nation. Like, it's definitely Duke and Auburn, and then below. I honestly think Duke's better than Auburn, but they do have that one head to they do have the head to head. Like, Duke has beaten them head to head, but that was in Cameron, and Auburn did give them a run for their money. But as we've seen this year, Cameron outside like I know Carolina struggled there. I thought Carolina would have kept it closer, but like Cameron really hasn't been that like big of a home court advantage in my opinion this year. I mean, if you let NC State hang around there, like something's off. Now I do know Duke kind of has that one or two games a year in Cameron where it gets a little ugly. Like, one that comes to mind is Duke usually has like a yearly loss like in Evansville at home in like ugly fashion, and they kind of hadn't had that yet. But like you said, that one thing that impresses me is Tennessee was able to flip the script. They were really able to hold Florida, which is a really fast offensive minded team that scores a lot of points. So that certainly is one I'd like to keep an eye out for. I definitely think Tennessee is a contender to win the SEC, not in terms of outright in the regular season. I think Auburn's got that on lock, but I think they could win possibly the SEC tournament. Like, usually it's not those one seeds that win those conference tournaments because it's obviously I know like Dan Hurley talked about last year with UConn. You still want to win the conference tournament. That's still a trophy. That's still silverware. But there are some coaches that are like, maybe the extra week's rest isn't so bad. But honestly, I'm of the opposite mind. Like, you don't want that rust to accumulate. Now, I know there's multiple different ways of looking at it. Some teams are hot off a bye week. Some teams are hot, some teams aren't. And I think it just really depends. I think it depends on what type of program you are. But especially like, I've already mentioned, it's not always those one seeds in the conference tournament that wins. Duke probably will win the ACC tournament, but I wouldn't be surprised if like a Louisville or someone else pulls it out, because 50% of the time over like the last 8 years in the ACC, a non-top 5 seed has won it. A 7 seed Virginia Tech won it a few years ago. Obviously, 10 seed NC State won it last year. This is the ACC in particular is a league where it's like teams may struggle in conference play, but like ACC teams get hot when it matters. Like, you can be ass in conference play, or I'll even put it like this. You can be 34-0, but if you lose second round of March Madness, it doesn't fucking matter anymore.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's all about who can get hot at the right time. That's essentially what playoffs are. Is can you get it done down the stretch? And now I know that's why there's kind of a barrier to entry to the NCAA tournament. Because, like, obviously in basketball, college basketball is one of those sports where anyone can jump up and meet anyone. But you kind of want a barrier to entry of teams who can, like, prove themselves, because you don't want to just hand, like, some random team a win.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, that's why there's a barrier to entry. But like I said, those are kind of that's what I have, the thoughts about the games you touched on. I've got some games I want to touch on. There's been a lot happen in the Big East lately, even in the West Coast Conference, which I will touch on in a second. First, we're going to go over to the Big East because a lot's been happening there. So first of all, like I said, Creighton beat Providence, Butler over Seton Hall. Villanova and DePaul kind of went down to the wire. I'm going to start with one, two teams that are probably bubble teams right now, Georgetown and Xavier. Micah Peavy for Georgetown obviously went off 27 points, 11 of 19 from the field. Dalen Swain, 8 of 11 from the field, 18 points. The big thing's not the result here. It's not the 74-69 win that Xavier got. It's the fist fight that Ed Cooley got into with a fan. Like, ooh. This man left Providence and lost all sense of class. Like, January 2023 on, Ed Cooley is a different man. Like, he's lost all sense of class and morality. He's out here, like, like shitting on Providence and then crying in private after, like the horrible, like, homecoming he had. And then here he is getting into a fucking physical altercation with the Xavier fan. I get we're the Big East, and I get Dan Hurley gets into physical altercations. Yes, that's happened. We haven't talked about it on here, but last year, not once, not twice, but 3 times, Dan Hurley got into physical altercations, 2 of which with students.
Holy.
This is part of my issue with coaches like this. Dan Hurley, he's held up in such high esteem as a professional head coach. You don't tell a kid in a student section you're going to rock his fucking shit for telling you he sucks. You suck. The kid literally said you suck after Creighton beat UConn last year. He just said you suck. He didn't say anything else. And Harley's like, I'll come up there and knock your ass out. Buddy, shut the fuck up. You're not tough. You're not big, bad, and tough. Okay, yes, you have 2 national championships with UConn. I'm sorry. That conference championship you had last year with UConn is a fucking Mickey Mouse one. The refs handed that game to UConn. That overrated Marquette team had your number, but you had to be saved by the Stripes because you couldn't figure out how to stop a 5-out. But that's not the point. My point's back to Ed Cooley. Ed Cooley, you're like the ex-girlfriend who breaks up with the boyfriend because she thinks she can find better, downgrades, and then crashes out because of it. She, like, becomes...
Gareth, are you speaking from personal experience?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying. Ed Cooley's on a Britney Spears type run right now. Like, when she, like, shaved her head and went all crazy and, like, assault... I don't know if she, like, actually assaulted
Hey, don't insult Britney Spears on my watch. Free Britney.
I know. I'm not saying
She
she's
didn't
not a
assault
victim.
anyone. The paparazzi was getting too much to her. They didn't respect a woman's privacy, and they were just objectifying her. Listen, I'm sorry. If Britney Spears has no fans, I am dead.
But he's having
Work
like
Bitch
these.
is a masterpiece, and I listen to it every time I work out. That's something you didn't know about me. Now you do.
Blueberry fact.
Blueberry Fat is a Britney Spears fan.
But no, Ed Cooley, you leave Providence, you want to be this Georgetown fan, you want to find this greatness at Georgetown. Yes, you currently have a better record than Providence, but you're 0-5 against Providence. You're fighting Xavier fans. I know you're trying to be like a great all-time coach, and I know Dan Hurley's a decent coach and he's won some national championships, but you're not taking after his best qualities right now. You're not exactly taking after his best qualities. This is bad timing. Like the song by Shadur Sanders, this is like if Ed Cooley released a song called Bad Timing. This is about as bad timing, especially with the negative talk about you. Man, should he really have left Providence? Like that talk's been going around. This is about as bad timing as when what's his name? Fucking Dan Hurley and his wife went on Twitter and ESPN and said all this shit about Providence students being pieces of shit. Right after Providence students raised $30,000 for one of the security guards to buy a flight home to Nigeria to see his family for the first time in 40 years, and you decided to make those comments the day after that came out on national news on USA Today and Good Morning America, you and your wife decided to make those comments. That's about as bad timing as this Ed Cooley thing. Word on the street is maybe you're not. Yes, you're 14-9 at Georgetown. Most 14-9 teams aren't on the bubble in a power conference. Most 14-9 teams in a power conference are thought of higher than Georgetown's thought of right now. We have people who think DePaul are better than you right now, and DePaul's 11-11.
Hey, don't sleep on DePaul.
I'm not shitting on DePaul, but people are still holding on at DePaul level. Like this is not good timing. People are calling you crazy for leaving Providence because you could have had it all with Providence. You would have had a really talented roster last year, but instead, I know Bryce Hopkins got hurt in the derail and everything. You would have had the most talented Providence College roster in years. Like you could have made a 2022 when they won the Big East and went to the Sweet 16 against Kansas was a generational run. You could have had an even better generational run. I say this sometimes. I don't think always the most talented teams win the tournament. And this is in any sports. Sometimes there are just teams where it's just average Joes that gel well together. And I'm not saying that 2022 Providence team sucked. And any of those players could destroy me in basketball. But there were talented players on that team. But those were just 12 guys that knew how to play basketball together. Those are just, and that's honestly how some of the best national championship teams come out. There are some years where teams win the national championship in football where they're not necessarily the most physical team. They're not the most skilled. They're just, yes, there's 80 people on the team, but, there's probably about, 40 players in the rotation. They're just 40 guys who know how to play football together really well. They just mesh. And that's what that Providence team was. That team last year that Kim English had that missed the tournament, you had skill and guys who knew how to play together. So you're missing out on a lot there, buddy. But moving on from the Georgetown game, there's two games I really want to highlight. And honestly, I think this team's getting, I think, the attention it deserves, but I think these people are sleeping on this team in terms of challengers towards Duke and Auburn. And this team is every 50-something, 60-something-year-old man's wet dream when it comes to college basketball. The St. John's Red Storm. The St. John's Red Storm have been on a fucking tear lately. Let me just read out some of their recent wins. They haven't lost since the start of the year. I don't think their last loss was to Creighton on New Year's Eve on the road. And a damn good Creighton team at that. A damn good Creighton team that's
Mm-hmm.
probably going to be ranked come Monday and is pretty much a lock for the tournament right now. They've beaten Butler, Xavier on the road, Villanova, they've beaten Georgetown on the road, Seton Hall on the road, Xavier on the road, Georgetown again. Then they beat Providence the other week. Then this week they've run the gauntlet. They made number 11 Marquette look silly. And I agree. Their offense is easy to stop. And St. John's showed it. St. John's, they didn't play scared like most teams do against that Marquette team. Most teams sit back in a zone because that's how you beat a 5-out. What does St. John's do? They say, motherfucker, I dare you. And they ran man-to-man. Man-to-man's how you lose to a 5-out. Rick Pitino in his mafia-looking ass said, beat me. I fucking dare you. I will run man-to-man. I dare you. I triple dog. In the words of Samuel L. Jackson, I triple dog dare you, motherfucker. Beat me. And they didn't. There was one possession late in that game where, Marquette, they're really good at getting a bucket when they need it because, 5-out teams, their strength is cutting. Everyone stands out behind the three-point line, and you don't know who's going to make the run. The offense knows who's going to make the run, but the defense doesn't. And especially when you're running man-to-man, you're incredibly vulnerable to this when any one of them can make a run. They tried to set up that play, and it went nowhere. And next thing you know, loose ball going the other way for St. John's. While it is an impressive win, it is a home win for St. John's. It was a home game. Granted, it was in MSG, which is not their home stadium, but they've struggled in MSG this year. The big thing for me, tonight in Gamble Arena against the UConn Huskies, the St. John's Red Storm goes in there. I know it's a close score. That UConn team looked pathetic. 25 turnovers, 19 field goals. 25 turnovers, 19 field goals. How many turnovers do you think St. John's had? 6. What do you think St. John's shot from the floor to beat UConn? This is going to blow your mind.
60.
This is going to tell you what type of basketball they play.
They have to play like 60% field goal.
19.
Ooh.
Oh, sorry. They 40 overall, but they shot 19 from behind the three-point arc.
Oh.
Do you know where the majority of their shots came from?
The paint.
The paint, baby. Not just the paint, but mid-range. Mid-range, too. This is why this team is every 50 to 60-year-old man's wet dream. They run a mid-range. They run a heavy inside offense with focus, like I'm talking old school Big East bully ball. They're trying to get layups. They're trying to get points in the paint, but they also have a mid-range aspect.
Mm-hmm.
This team is NC State if they can make their shots. Similar style of offense.
NC State if they're good.
I'm not kidding. They generate similar style looks. The top 2 teams in the nation who force the most turnovers, NC State and St. John's. The teams who score the most in transition, NC State and St. John's. The teams who turn the ball over the least in the nation, averaging both less than 7 turnovers a game, NC State and St. John's. I'm just saying, this St. John's team, they can get points anywhere. I sat there this entire game taking notes going, Jesus Christ. And I literally wrote old man's wet dream on this paper when taking notes on this game. Honestly, the pluses, the only thing that I feel like an old head would have an issue with on this team is the free throw shooting. Like, the free throw shooting for this St. John's Red Storm team is abysmal. And their best player, Kadari Richmond, honestly, even more of a middle-aged man's wet dream. He's a guard, but he's physical. He's money from mid-range. he can back down a center and absolutely manhandle them and make them look like a little boy as a guard. The only problem is he's a guard. What do you think he shoots from the free throw line, Aiden? And it is worse than you think. He's a guard too.
If I'm thinking like a very bad percentage, 30.
He shoots 45% from the free throw line as a guard.
Ooh.
And Gus Johnson was like, man, for a guard, a bad free throw percentage for a guard is like below 70.
Yeah.
He's over 30 below that.
Get on the line, boy. Get on the line, man. You gotta get those free throws in.
But you know what the crazy thing? What's his shot? The mid-range jumper. It doesn't make sense. Make it make sense. This man's sweet spot, literally the free throw line when it's not a free throw. That is Kadari Richmond's sweet spot. If he pulls up from the free throw line, not on a free throw again, automatic. Kadari Richmond, automatic from the free throw line when it's not a free throw. So, like I said, but it can come from anywhere on this St. John's team. RJ Lewis Jr., one of their guards, he had 20-plus points tonight. He lit up from behind the arc. They just look good. And I got to tip my hat off to St. John's. They cleaned up in the portal. Kadari Richmond was someone I wanted on Providence, but current transfer from Seton Hall, but he's someone I wanted from Providence. What gets you with this St. John's team is they're not exciting. They can be exciting at times. This is going to segue into something. They don't play the most entertaining style of offense. They don't play, they're one of these teams. I don't know if I've said it on here, but I've said it on previous radio shows and podcasts I've been on for sports. The teams that get you in college basketball aren't the ones who go on these massive momentum runs. And yes, you're more likely to win if you go on those like kill shot 10-0 runs. And I'm not talking about runs in the literal sense. I'm talking about, how when a team's on a run, you can feel the momentum. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about teams that go on runs and you don't feel it. Like it's not very adrenaline filled. They just kind of creep up on you. It's, you miss a shot at your end and they just go down the other end and make their shot. It's not like they're up and running in transition. It's like, they're just getting buckets and you're not. And it still counts as a run. Mm-hmm. St. John's goes on what I like to call these sneaky runs where the game flow feels like you're in it, but you're down 15. Like you're trading blows, but you go 5 minutes where you can't get a basket, but you don't feel the momentum shift. So there's no sense of urgency. That's what's dangerous about these teams. That's what was dangerous about UConn is there's sometimes yes, you have obviously with Dan Hurley teams, there were runs where you could feel the momentum and you could feel when the air came out of the building. But there were some times when Providence would play Dan Hurley's UConn teams, and all of a sudden you'd blink and you'd be down 8, but it wouldn't feel like it because they'd just be these sneaky runs because they just know how to get a bucket when you need it. And that's what I think is scary about this St. John's team when it comes to playing these other teams is they can sneak back into a game. St. John's was down 28-8 at one point in this game against UConn and came out with a 6-point victory. St. John's went on a 25-9 run to end the first half, and it didn't feel like a 29-5 run. There wasn't like any sort of momentum shift. It was just St. John's was just making their shots, and it was like those quiet runs, 6-0 run here, 4-0 run there, 8-0 run there. You could kind of feel it, but it wasn't necessarily anything like momentum shifting or like massive. It was just like you didn't feel it. This is why I probably can't classify them as anything more than a dark horse, but for me, St. John's are a Final Four contender. If they can keep playing this solid basketball, it's good. But this is going to segue into a little rant for me. Where did Rick Pitino get his coaching start? Where was his first big break? He went to a Final Four with this school. Rick Pitino started out as a Providence Friar. No shade to him. He left. He went to the NBA. So that's not what I'm complaining about. Mm-hmm. Do you know who his assistant was?
No.
A guy you're familiar with on this show. We highlight his team sometimes. Herb Sendek.
Hmm.
Herb Sendek runs an eerily similar offense to Rick Pitino.
Hmm.
Obviously, he followed Pitino around before Pitino got to Providence, so obviously somewhere. Rick Pitino, thought of one as the greatest college basketball coach, runs this inside physical offense. It works. You'd think fans would be happy, right? This style of offense, high percentage shots, not heavy on the three, but he's a shooter if it's open guy.
Yeah.
Herb Sendek gets to NC State. NC State's coming out of its worst era, the Les Robinson era. NC State in the Les Robinson era consistently finished last in the ACC for like his 8 to 9 year tenure. That there was one play-in game in the ACC tournament at this point, and it was literally called the Les Robinson Invitational. You can fucking look that up. That is the official name for it. You can Google that shit. GTS. Herb Sendek brings NC State out of the Les Robinson era. 4 straight, and this you might be saying NIT. 4 straight NIT appearances. He finishes that up with 5 straight NCAA tournament berths. Once he got out of Les Robinson's recruits. Now, you may be asking, Aiden, if he had 5 straight.
That's a real thing.
Yes. If Herb Sendek had 5 straight NCAA tournament berths, a few of which were 6 Sweet 16 runs, why did he leave NC State? Now, that would be a great question. Well, it was kind of like a reading of the tea leaves thing that Pitino talked about with
Calipari. Who won his homecoming, as I mentioned, against Kentucky.
Yep. But what I will say is Herb Sendek was kind of forced out. Do you know the main reasons? So, okay, I will concede this. To these people who wanted him out, he was not very good at beating Carolina or Duke. That was like any team he had to win. Every other team he had a winning record against. It's just he really struggled with Carolina and Duke. He'd maybe beat them at home, but he was not good at stealing them on the road. But what did he do? He consistently made the NCAA tournament. The other big gripe that I've seen a lot of old heads talk about, particularly in Facebook groups, is he didn't play an exciting offense. What offense does he run, Aiden? The Rick Pitino offense. But who's not fucking complaining about Rick Pitino offense?
50 to 60-year-olds.
Yes. Yes, they love his offense. It's amazing. They haven't seen anything greater. It's amazing. It's what they want. Back in the day, these same old heads at NC State are like, it's not flashy. They don't score a lot of points. St. John's averages like 64 points a game. Where are they currently ranked? 12th. They're probably going to be in the top 10 after this week.
Mm-hmm.
My point, and I'm probably going to chop this up as a clip just to, garner some engagement from some older NC State fans. What the fuck did you want? He consistently made the NCAA tournament. Several ACC championship game appearances. Yes, he didn't win, but he consistently got there more than any other coach. He's the only NC State coach to have 5 straight NCAA tournament appearances. Yes, he had 4 NIT appearances, but that's when he still had the Les Robinson recruits. A third criticism that I've seen when it's been talked about on discussion boards, and I bring it up that we should never have let him go, is like he was an NIT tournament regular. And I'm not big for fights on social media, but I commented back at this person on Facebook and I said, if you actually knew the stats, no, he doesn't. He has more NCAA tournament appearances than he does in IT. 5 straight NCAA tournament appearances. He goes, that's not true. And he goes, well, he also played boring basketball. And I said, I'm like, it was boring, but it worked. He goes, it was boring. No one liked to watch it. I said, if you like entertaining offense so much, go watch the NBA. Go play 2K. Go play the fucking basketball version of Retro Bowl on your phone. If it works and you're upset about it and the person goes, well, I only watch March Madness because that's all I find interesting. Well, then don't fucking have an opinion about a regular season NC State coach then, buddy. I'm sorry. If you didn't even watch the games, don't fucking talk to me. You know who watched those games? Little Gareth watched those games. Little Gareth knows what the fuck happened because I watched them, unlike this dude. And unlike every other person coming at me in those comments. Like, buddy, you weren't even alive. I was alive for those. I may have been 3 or 4 or 5, but I don't remember each game specifically, but at least, you know what that is? You can kind of tell at least if your sports teams are good or not.
Yeah.
Like, I'd remember hearing my parents talk about the NCAA tournament. Like, NC State being consistently in it when I was like 4, 5, 6, 7. Like, clearly, we were doing fine. And that's something a state coach has struggled with since then, is making the fucking tournament. Mark Godfrey, he had his time. He had like 2 Sweet 16 appearances, beat Villanova twice, number 1 Villanova, and it wasn't even close. He blew out a Jay Wright Villanova. That was awesome to watch. I actually had hated Villanova before being a Providence student, so, what gives? So, I already hated Villanova. But, and then Kevin Keats comes along. Few tournament appearances to start out with. Doesn't see the tournament for like 4 straight years, and then makes it. Loses in the first round too, While I was frustrated at that game, that went on to be the Creighton team that went on to win the fucking Big East and destroy Providence. So fair. And then the Final Four run. Not complaining about Keats. I think he's our guy for right now. But what I'm saying is, my point off of this Rick Pitino thing is, no matter the depths that Rick Pitino's career seems to drop, fell out of favor at Kentucky, fell out of favor at Louisville, had to coach overseas, came back, coached at Iona. His style of offense still rings true. This kind of low post, mid-range offense, high quality shots. Send that go. And what's he doing? He's tearing it up with Santa Clara. Yes, they're sitting at 4th place out of 10th in the WCC. They're likely not going to make March Madness unless they win the tournament because they've got the likes of Gonzaga and St. Mary's, who, by the way, have turned it on recently. St. Mary's are on like a 10-game win streak. They're currently sit atop the WCC, currently dethroning Gonzaga. But my last point, which I will leave NC State fans with, is, yes, I at times have wanted Keats to leave at this point this year, so I'm not going to talk about that. But at what point, when we do find the guy, if Keats finally figures out how to be a regular in the tournament, how long before you're going to want him gone because he's not, winning national titles and doesn't play exciting enough basketball? And I realize ultimately college sports are a product, but for me, I know for you and I, I know you and I aren't as big strategically into college basketball, but you and I feel appreciate winning more than the how. Obviously, I've made an effort to understand offenses. When Kim English came to Providence, I made an effort to understand basketball offenses more because people were talking about how, Kim English shoots a lot of threes. I'm like, well, fuck, this doesn't sound good. It sounds a little scary if he encourages 20 plus 3-point attempts a game. I don't know if I like this.
Mm-hmm.
I did. But when I found out his inside-out offense where he forces double teams on the inside to open up wide open 3-pointers on the outside, I'm like, oh, they're wide open. That's why you're forcing double teams. I'm okay with that. But would you really care? Your offense, say it's strategically sound, but it's boring. It's this mid-post, low-post offense that Rick Pitino runs. Would you be okay with that as long as you were winning? Say next year, this would never happen.
Yeah.
But Pitino's not leaving Louisville or not leaving St. John's. But say somehow, the donors at Carolina get fucking pissed and fed up with Hubert. They kick him to the curb.
Yeah.
And they go out and get Rick Pitino. And he comes in, and it's not flashy. You guys are bottom of the ACC in 3-point shooting. But, next year at this time, say you're 10-1 in the ACC. You've got Rick Pitino. You're the best 2-point shooting team in the nation, but you're the worst 3-point shooting team. You play a boring offense, but you're winning. Do you care? It's strategically sound, but do you care?
Okay, do not
exactly.
Care.
Exactly. You see what I'm saying here with Herb Sendek. It worked. The only team to be able to slow down Tim Duncan in Wake Forest Yes, other teams beat them, but the only team who was able to stop Tim Duncan, Herb Sendek led NC State. Was it pretty? No. Do you know what the halftime score of that game was, Aiden? 17-12. But they stopped Tim Duncan. That's what Herb said before that game. He's like, we're going to stop Tim Duncan. And that's what he did. There was another game where I think he was trying to stop Chris Paul and Wake Forest. They did the same thing. Low scoring halftime score. So it works. You know, it's not even that. I think almost the Rick Pitino offense is similar to, like, for those of you who've seen Coach Carter.
Yeah.
You run in his offense.
Yeah.
Do you know what Pitino and Sindek and other people in that coaching tree teams do on defense? You run. It's constant switching. It's like I talked about in the beginning on how you beat Creighton. You force that double team to get Culprin to pull the ball, and then you back out of it. You don't stand it. No. That's the end of my rant with that. I'll move on to some more games real quickly because that was just my rant with – that was one thing I realized today watching St. John's is, like, you know, from what I've heard – okay, that might not be entirely accurate about Herb Sinek running exactly the Pitino offense. It's not – like, he's going to have his own intricacies because he's his own coach.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a similar style of coach as he wanted high percentage shots was my point. I doubt he runs the exact same offense. Like, that's the whole point. You're your own person. So – other games I'm looking at throughout this week, nothing really much happened this week in the ACC. I mean, Duke and Syracuse played. Louisville destroyed Boston College, and that's another team that's, you know. One thing I will address, I've got 2 more points I'd like to make. 3, but third one is more of a point that I want to make with you and talk. There's a lot of this talk that the ACC is going to be a 2-bid league. That's fucking stupid. I can find you 5 teams right now that deserve to make it. And I'm talking not even on the bubble. Duke, Louisville, Clemson, Wake, and SMU. 5 teams right there. 5-bid league. Wake sitting at 17-6, several quad 1 wins. SMU, same deal. Clemson, same deal. Louisville, same deal. Duke, 12-0 in conference play. There you go. No need. So, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
5 teams. Stanford, okay. Leaving Stanford out, I get it. 15-8. Stanford does not. I don't think Stanford's the team to make it. They don't really have any quad 1 wins, but they don't really have any bad losses either. They're kind of mid. So, final point I'd like to make. I'd like to call out Gus Johnson on a thing he said tonight. Hello, my name's Gus Johnson, and beside me is Jimmy whatever. I'd like to welcome you to the college basketball capital of the world, Storrs, Connecticut. No.
Nah,
No.
man. Nah.
But UConn, the home of 6 national championships, that's cute. That's really cute. I'm sorry, one school can't be the capital of the world. I'd like to bring you to an area of the country where, like, 4 teams have combined for, like, 20 plus. Like, UConn can come talk about being the college basketball capital of the world. They don't even have the most NCAA championships. Like, UCLA, who hasn't been good in years, has more of a claim to the college basketball capital of the world with 9 that haven't happened in 40 years than they do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. If Fairfield University somehow fucking wins 2 in the next 2 years, okay, you maybe have an argument. Or Central Connecticut State, wins 1, Fairfield wins 4. Okay, you might have an argument there from recency. But, like, UConn has had 2 in 2 years. I'm sorry. The last time UConn won a national championship, I think there's been 2 Carolina and 2 Duke championships since then. Like, UConn even left the fucking big – UConn left power conferences in that time and went to mid-major. Like, I'm sorry. You cannot tell me you're the college basketball capital of the world if you were in a fucking mid-major conference 6 years ago. I'm sorry. You were in a mid-major conference 6 years ago, and you weren't even good. You didn't even win it every year. Memphis fucking dog walked you for 6 years in that conference. I'm sorry. You maybe won that conference once or twice, but you went to the American. And yes, they probably should get a group of 5 label and not a mid-major label. You didn't even fucking, you know what? This is going on Instagram rant. UConn cannot call itself the college basketball capital of the world. I don't care. You're the only team in recent years to two-peat. You were in a mid-major conference 6 years ago that you didn't even dominate. Don't come at me with this. You had yes, you might have won it and had some runs. You were in a Mickey Mouse conference. Yes, we look at Memphis and say they're a good team. But do we start calling Memphis the college basketball capital of the world? No. I'm sorry. Yes, you won in a really tough league that is the Big East. But is the Big East the entire world? That was a pretty weak Big East last year. Yes, the top 6 teams, it was pretty top heavy. But those bottom 5 teams were not great. They were not great. I'm sorry. That DePaul team was the worst team we've seen in years. And do I even need to say it again? You were in a mid-major conference 6 years ago. And in that, you didn't even own that conference. You didn't even win it. 50% of the time you were in the American. I'm sorry. The college basketball capital of the world was not home to a mid-major conference for nearly 10 years. I'm sorry. You left power conferences. I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry. The only time you won natties is when you've been in the Big East. You were literally a joke for 10 years. You might have been ranked as high as 20, but you were in a mid-major conference.
Do you think maybe he was also including women's college basketball?
I don't know. But even then,
I'm not gonna lie. If you well, no, I mean, okay. I think it's a great overstatement. But if you include men and women's college basketball, I do think you kind of have, Gus Johnson has a point to be made.
A wrong point.
Yeah, wrong point, but I can understand.
Who's also got 4 great women's teams with similar amounts of national championships. The women's tobacco road too.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Buddy needs to learn himself up on some ACC basketball. And I know there's going to be some fucking clown in the comments of this video going, boom, boom, the ACC sucks this year. Okay. And fucking UConn was in a group of 5 conference. Who cares? Buddy. You know when ACC teams have been in a non-power conference? The Big 4 have been in a non-power conference? Never. But they were in the SoCon. You mean the SoCon with Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, State, Duke, Carolina? I'm sorry. The SoCon of the 40s was a power conference. Indeed. I'm sorry.
And we're going to revert to it soon.
Yeah. With the current talk that's going on, NC State and Carolina may be headed back.
Or going forward, this is a real ship of Theseus. This is a conference of Theseus.
The issue with this is, I know there's been talk about Carolina going to the SEC, but what the point that you and I have been wondering is, how strong is this legislation that requires State and Carolina to stay together?
Yeah.
I think on a given year, this is a good move for basketball. Not this year for State, but I feel like on a given year where the SEC isn't as strong, the average SEC basketball year, I think State and Carolina would run shit in the SEC. Kentucky, obviously Kentucky's there. Kentucky and Auburn would have something to say about that. But for the most part, we'd consistently be top 4. Alabama's been good the past 4 years, but they've been terrible in the last 10. Ole Miss really hasn't been good till the last 2 years. Mississippi State. I think for some of these SEC teams, it's just they've got, they're seniors and they're going to go back. They're not going to be bad next year, but I think they're going to go back to being, average Power 5 conference instead of 7 ranked teams. So, and my final point I'd like to make for today. You'd think with how much basketball history, how much basketball success that we have in the state of North Carolina, the storiedness the competitiveness down to Catholic middle school leagues. There's an entire, for those you don't know, entire March Madness style tournament for Catholic middle school basketball played in Charlotte, North Carolina, that all the Catholic schools in the state get invited to, called Shamrock. It's a massive deal. You should look it up. There's articles written about Shamrock, about how like legendary this tournament is. You think were basketball so ingrained and into the state's just being that we'd have a better fucking NBA team than the goddamn Hornets. You think with how much pride this state takes in its basketball. Like, there are state fans about to kill themselves over how bad a season they're having. And there are Power 4 teams that wish they could have NC State's record at some times. Like, there are certain teams in, like, the Big 12 who, like, don't even sniff 4 wins who are like, damn, I'd go for, you know, close to 500 in record.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, like, and, you know, if any Tobacco Road teams are remotely close to 500, their fans are ready to kill themselves. Like,
Exhibit A.
In a state that cares so much about basketball, with so much rich basketball history. Jordan, I'm talking Jordan, anyone from Duke, David Thompson of NC State, Derek Wittenberg of NC State, Carlos Boozer. Who else? Tyler Hansborough, Christian Leitner. Like, the storied people behind this: Roy Williams, Jim Valvano, Mike Krzyzewski, Hubert Davis as a player, Sidney Lowe when he was a player. Like, how the fuck do you get the Charlotte Hornets from that? And I get it's pro basketball. A lot of the product and talent is not from the state.
Mm-hmm.
But how does Mr. North Carolina basketball himself, literally the state of North Carolina basketball, in persona, not give more of a fuck about his NBA team to fix shit? Instead, he just wants to sit on his yacht in Morehead City. Jordan, if you are as Mr. Basketball as you say you are, fix the fucking Hornets. We are a basketball state. They are an embarrassment. We thank you for fighting tooth and nail to keep the abhorrent thing that was the fucking Bobcats in North Carolina. Thank you. Thank you for keeping some semblance of basketball here. But, like, come on, man. Like, the Hornets won for the first time in, like, a month today. And I don't even think they have double-digit wins. Okay, I will give them that. They're not Washington Wizards bad. They're not level of bad that the conference tournament winner has more home wins than you do, okay? This isn't like a thing where, you know, NC State wins the ACC tournament and has more wins than the Washington Wizards do on the year, okay? This is not a scenario like that. But let me take a look here. The Hornets are 13-36. Like, come on. I know we're not an NBA podcast, but, like, what Jordan needs to do, this is my thing. Jordan needs to put together a Continental Congress of North Carolina basketball. Like, I'm gonna take a book out of Oversimplified History's video of his Revolutionary War video, where he's like, the Continental Congress was a badass who's who of American history. To fix the Hornets, we need a badass who's who of North Carolina basketball. Jordan needs to get his childhood hero. Yes, the Mr. UNC's childhood hero was an NC State player named David Thompson. He needs to get Davey T. He needs to get Roy Williams. He needs to get Mike Krzyzewski. He needs to get Christian Leitner. He needs to get Sidney Lowe. He needs to get all the fucking homies together. Like, all the classic ACC basketball players. Chris Paul, you know.
Throw Tim Duncan in there.
Tim Duncan. Chris Corciani. Basically anyone on the NC State 83 or 74 team. Anyone on a Carolina national championship team. Anytime on a Duke national championship team. They need to get the fuck down and sit down and go, how are we going to win games? We need a round table of who's who of North Carolina basketball. We need them Here, I'll draft it right now. Jordan, or well, like you said, Jordan, Duncan, Derek Whittenberg, David Thompson, just all the North Carolina basketball players need to get together and fix the damn Hornets. This is sad. With how ingrained in our culture basketball is in North Carolina, the Hornets are just, I don't even know what to consider.
Move them to Raleigh, too.
Move them to Raleigh. Move them to Raleigh. At least move them to a city that cares about basketball. Like, Raleigh during that Final Four run turned into fucking Philadelphia after a playoff win last year. Like, move them to Raleigh.
Put them in the Lenovo Center.
Put them in the Lenovo Center. Put them in the Lenovo Center. Send NC State back to Reynolds. NC State plays well in Reynolds. Just put them in Reynolds. They need to stay there.
To take down that Hall of Fame thing.
Take down that Hall of Fame thing. Get the capacity back up to 13,000 from 7,500. Move the Hall of Fame thing out in the little vestibule area. But we need to put together a who's who of North Carolina basketball.
This is never fucking happening.
This is never happening. But this is my bid to fix the Hornets. We need to put together a who's who of North Carolina basketball to fix this shit. Because this is I'm not a big NBA fan. I'm trying to get into the NBA. But I've talked about with some of my friends, I'm trying to get into the NBA. I want to get into it. I want to understand it. Because right now, I don't see it as real basketball. You know what I see as real basketball? College basketball, men's and women's college basketball. Which brings up an interesting point that I heard Gus Johnson say today on the air, which I agree with. He's like, men's college basketball is awesome. But he's like, if you really want to learn the fundamentals of the game, you know what he said? Watch women's college basketball. He goes, don't watch the WNBA. He goes, watch ACC and SEC women's college basketball. That will teach you the fundamentals of basketball better than any other league will. They said don't watch high school, don't watch the NBA, He's like, you can watch the men's league. He's like, men's college basketball. He's like, it'll teach you about strategy. But he's like, you really want to talk about learning fundamentals of basketball? Watch the ACC women's, watch the Big East women's, and watch the SEC women's. He's like, you will learn more about basketball watching that than you will watching the NBA any night of the week. And I thought that was a good point. Just with how much basketball is ingrained in our culture, it's just sad that I'll get back to my point. The Hornets are so bad. I've talked to some friends about trying to get into the NBA. They're like, yeah, it's just going to be hard for you to get into the NBA with how bad the Hornets are. They're like, they're a good watch. They're like, they're a really exciting team with a lot of prospect and talent. They're really looking like they're on the up. But I'm like, on the up? We're 13 and almost 40. What do you mean on the up?
Well, we got ball.
I know, but you get what I'm saying. Do you have any thoughts on how to fix the Hornets? Do you think this who's who of North Carolina basketball? It's not going to happen, but if it were to happen, do you think it would help if they just we just put the great minds of North Carolina basketball in one room and said, you guys cannot leave until you figure this out?
Here's my plan. We build a time machine. Okay? Stay with me here. Okay. LeBron James said if he were to go to college, he would have gone to UNC. All right? Stay with me here. We go to LeBron James in Akron and say, LeBron, you're a bust. You never make it in the NBA. You need to go to college, man. The future is not looking good. We tell him to go to UNC. I get a national championship that I can harp on that I never witnessed because I'd probably be 2 years old when they win, and I wasn't even a UNC fan yet. But at least I'll have it over you. And then he eventually goes to the league. He does LeBron James things. So then LeBron James is all the way. LeCap James is into owning teams and not really knowing much about them. I think he does that with Liverpool and stuff like that. So around this time now, we can start assembling that Congress, get LeBron James in too, and then I'd say we'd be pretty solid. But in all seriousness, we're kind of cooked. I'm not gonna lie. If we can, in all seriousness, I hesitate to say to tank right now because we've been tanking for the past 20 years, it seems like.
We made
And
the playoffs once.
do
Once.
play-in games count?
No.
No.
We've at least made it as the Hornets. We don't have to reach back to the Bobcat years to say we made the playoffs. So
Yeah, yeah. I don't even think a Carolina Congress can save this team.
not
I
even
don't.
forcing just all the great minds of North Carolina basketball into one
What are they
insane.
going to do?
Well, Jordan, David Thompson can take their, knowledge from the NBA. They can be like the business side of the NBA. They can be like, our draft board, who to call out for a coach. And then from there, everyone else is just advisors. They fire whoever the coach is. You know who they make the coach? They don't have one. Because they'd be better off without one at this point.
Are they like are you like 2011 San Diego Chargers it or something like that?
No. You know what they need to do? They need to get Mike Krzyzewski's ass off the fucking beach down in the Outer Banks and say, "Bitch, you're gonna get in there and fix this." I can't bring like I would say try and resurrect Valvano, but like I don't really think he likes the NBA either. But before we move on, there's been some, and Aiden and I have talked about this, and there's this one guy I follow on TikTok and Instagram. I forget his name, but he's trying to bring more of a positive spin to sports media. Like, because a lot of sports media is like they make a lot of money off being negative. And I know we were just negative about the Hornets, but we offered a solution. We were being positive. We offered a solution. We were being positive. We weren't saying fuck the Hornets. We were saying we offered a solution. And I never celebrate people's failures, but this failure could be bringing something to Raleigh. And I have a cap from a team from this league, but because this is North Carolina and North Carolina is getting a scheme of this style, but talks with the city of Tampa Bay are breaking down with the Rays, and the mayor of St. Petersburg said he is ready to move on without an MLB team. You know what the city on deck for an MLB team is right now? Raleigh. Raleigh is on deck for an MLB team. And currently, there's an offer on the table with Pinellas County in the city of St. Pete to fund $600 million stadium costs. But there are delays in legislation, and because the hurricane have added additional costs that the Rays cannot pay for. And you know who said it's not going to help them? The city of St. Petersburg, or the county that Tampa Bay's in. And people are thinking they're going to move away.
Well, they're going to be playing some games this season, like across the nation, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're going to be trying out in Durham, right?
Yeah. However, as much as I'd love an MLB team, I'd fear what that would do to the Bulls. And I love the Durham Bulls. Like, I don't watch their games, but I follow them as much as I can on Twitter. I follow them on ESPN. Like, I have the gear. I watch them when they can. Like, I will try and find illegal streams if I can of the playoffs. That's what I do. So I watch them when I can.
You got to come down for a Bulls game.
We can cover that. We'll be a Bulls podcast too. So, but that's good news. I just figured I'd touch on that. Like, I feel bad for the city of Tampa Bay. Like,
let's see. Here's the thing: Tampa Bay owns the Bulls, though. So
they do.
So that's like a major reason why they're looking into the RDU area. So I don't see a reason. Like, if obviously they would probably use the Bulls Stadium first, but serious talks would also probably have to include Charlotte because, like, it seems like there would just be probably a bidding war between the two cities. But if Raleigh wins, like I don't see a way, like I don't see like a reason why the Bulls would have to go.
Yeah, well, I just mean like it'd be a drop in popularity. There'd be something else to go and see in the city based, and like not. But I know Raleigh and Durham are two different cities, but there'd be something else to do
In the
in the
area.
same time period during the same season.
Yeah.
But my thing is, what you could do is, I know the current name and Roy Cooper, even though he's not the governor anymore, said he's like, I'm not the richest man on the earth, but he said he'd like shell out money and donations to bring an MLB team to Raleigh. Like,
Yeah.
whether you disagree with him or agree with him politically, this man, he wants to bring. He's very big in sports in Raleigh. He's a big donor and proponent of the Hurricanes. Like,
Hmm.
he said, he's like, I know I'm not popular with a certain party, but he's like, my goal is I want to bring that. He's like, if I could have in my time as governor, he's like, the only thing I regret is wish I could have brought I wish I could have brought baseball to Raleigh. Like, he is a big baseball guy. He loves Raleigh sports.
Hmm.
Is he a Carolina grad? I know
Yeah, he is. He is.
he's at a lot of games. Like, he's really into the local sports. Like, he's a local guy, loves the sports. So, um, what I will say is, and no shade to Charlotte, but you would think with how big Charlotte is, there'd be a bit more of a sports culture there of like greatness in my mind. Like, it blows my mind. Yes, Charlotte has a big Division I university, but with how big they are and the money that's in Charlotte, you'd think they'd have more success. Like, you'd think they would have a UNC or NC State size university in terms of success in sports. And yes, UNC Charlotte's good at baseball. Don't get me wrong. Solid baseball team, really good soccer team.
Yeah.
But you think they'd have, with all the money there, they'd have more success in things like college football. And I know it's
They
kind of been
just
the thing.
started.
They just started it. But you think with the money there would have that would have been a thing sooner. That would have been a thing sooner in Charlotte.
Yeah.
So, and I just feel like, and this could just be because the Panthers suck and like, the Hornets have sucked for the longest time. The Panthers are obviously on the way up, and they're not the Charlotte Panthers, they're the Carolina Panthers, but like, it just really doesn't feel like there's an air of like greatness in Charlotte. Like, just in terms of sports wise, like there doesn't feel like there's a lot of pride around that city. And that could just be because the teams there suck right now.
That's because their abbreviation is CLT. You'd be misreading it when you go into the airport. I'd be calling my girlfriend and said, hey, yo, I finally found it.
Oh my God. I'm clipping that. And by clipping that, not taking it out, I'm making that one of the Instagram clips for the episode.
I don't want that. I don't want that circulating. I don't think I should want that circulating. That's a joke. I'm really great at finding Charlotte. I basically live there.
You know what I'm saying? With the city of that, like, I don't know. I feel like the Triangle area and places around the Triangle area really take pride in not just their high school, not just their middle school, but like their college teams. Even if it's like, Campbell, like they aren't the greatest at sports, but they take pride in their baseball. Like, baseball is their thing, or the 1 year every 8 years they're good at basketball, they're all in. Or like, even on a down year, Tobacco Road teams fill their stadiums just because, we're in North Carolina. This is our team. We're still going to pull for them. Mm-hmm. Charlotte. Now, I'll give the Panthers credit. They still filled that stadium because, like, once they turned that corner, even though they were losing games, they were at least exciting to watch. They were exciting to watch. Like, they were bearable. There were flashes of light. There was silver lining. There was hope for the future. There was, hey, this team could be something in the future. The Hornets, that fucking stadium's empty on a day in, day out. Like, I'm sorry. There's no pride there, which is why we need the Continental Congress of North Carolina to fix it.
Yes.
But I digress. So that is my hair is messed up, so we'll just go back to this. But
damn it, I could have said that joke better. I just found out better.
It's all good. From there, Shall we move on to the next thing? Anything MMA wise? I know there's a couple fights this weekend.
Alrighty, so pulling up, going on to MMA. First, I want to cover the Israel. Well, first off, the fight night in Abu Dhabi for that had the main. Hang on, let me pull this. Do, do, do. Where is it? There we go. So, the February 1st fight night in Saudi Arabia, we had concluded. First off, want to just mention Israel Adesanya. I don't think it's looking good for him right now. Lost to Imhoff by knockout in the second round. Bro just came out kind of flat, and I kind of knew like something was up. Like if Israel Adesanya is headlining a fight night against a middleweight contender that's not even like the highest contender in the middleweight division, there's something up. And Israel Adesanya has just kind of been on the down. I think he's past his prime now, and I think his retirement's coming soon. This is it's sad for me to see as a fan of his. Like honestly, I thought he could have had a couple more good years in him, but with just the nature of the fight game itself, like your prime comes and it goes in an instant. Like what a 2 year long championship run or a 3 year long championship run, like that might not seem it sometimes it just seems like forever, but in the grand scheme of things it's very fast and it comes and goes. And I think we're just seeing a new age in the middleweight division, and we're going to have to start living in a world post Israel Adesanya. And I think this is kind of going to be kind of the this fight's going to be the send off for him. I don't see him fighting anytime soon. I think he's probably going to be sitting out for the majority of the year. If he gets one more fight, I think that might be the fight where he hangs it up. Just because he's proved so much already. He's had his like legendary title run. He got his belt back, and I don't think he has anything else to prove, and I think he's already kind of solidified himself as a Hall of Famer, so there's no real reason for him to continue fighting, especially if he's going to be losing fights by submission or in this case by knockout in the second round, which is something that Prime Izzy wouldn't really have happen because he was the knockout artist. He was the technical striker, but he just got outdid, and unfortunate to see, but just the nature of the business. But in other fights, Sergey Pavlovich won by unanimous decision. I want to talk about Sergey Pavlovich. He has, and I saw this in a video earlier, so I'm taking from it a little bit, but this video I saw was before the fight, but I'm going to kind of expand on it. Sergey has lost a little bit of his aura. He won the fight. He won by unanimous decision, but Sergey was a knockout technician, and like he would be finishing fights in the first round. Like he was basically the Russian Francis Ngannou, but just with his most recent fights, I see him kind of starting to change his style of fighting. He's no longer going to be like the guy that knocks you out in the first round. I think his key to victory, like moving forward, he's going to have to start taking fights to decision, and that's how he won this fight. Clear sweep on the scorecards, unanimous decision of 30 to 27 in Sergey's favor. And he was able to land like a hell of a lot of strikes, like 145 strikes out of 208 strikes. He had an absolute great percentage. What I liked about his fight was that he was landing a lot of smart strikes consistently, and that's something that I kind of had concerns with him before. Like part of his aura was the fact that he was just like a heavy hitter, knockout. You know, if he hit you, you're going to go down. But if he, there was a good chance he was going to miss you. One thing that I think in losing his aura of being like the big like knockout artist, he's kind of become more smart with his strikes, and I think that's going to be kind of important as he tries to make a name for him, continue to make a name for himself in the heavyweight division, especially because this heavyweight division is just in total shambles right now, and there's no real uh, names other than Tom Aspinall, John Jones, and maybe you can make the argument of Cyril Gahn, but Cyril Gahn, like I'm just not high on him whatsoever. But going on into the last fight that I want to mention, Michael Page beat Sarah Magomedov. I was surprised by this. I thought Sarah was going to I thought he was going to come away with the win on this one, but he kind of got, I wouldn't say fraud checked, but he got checked a lot. Um, Michael Page just able to outstrike him, but having been able to give more devastating strikes to the head, that kind of what led to the decision. Overall, there was consensus that Michael Page won the fight, but there was one judge who gave one round to Sarah Magomedov, where the other two judges gave him the clean sweep. Um, I'm interested to see where Magomedov goes from here, just because I saw him continuing his undefeated streak. And now with a loss, I want to see how he responds to adversity, especially your first loss as a MMA pro usually kind of helps dictate like the direction upon which your career trajectory is going. But going on to this week, we have UFC 312, and we have two championship fights on this card, and that's kind of where I want to kind of highlight this week. First, our women's strawweight title fight. We have Zhang Wang Li versus Tatiana Suarez. I am going to say that I think Zhuang Wang Li is going to win this fight. She is just, I for some reason, like she is considered the underdog in this fight, but she has just been on a tear with her title run as of late, and I just see her continuing her streak of greatness. I'll say this: Tatiana Suarez, she's very interesting up and coming fighter. She's 11-0. If there's anyone that's going to take her down, it's probably her. Her strike percentage is probably one of the most elite when it comes to the women's strawweight division. Interesting how she fights in southpaw. That's something that I think is really going to be important in this fight, especially when you consider the fact that Zhuang Li uses kind of a switch stance. She's good on kind of both sides. So I think for this fight, we're going to be seeing both fighters fight in southpaw, leading to heavy jabs and pretty stronger cross punches. Um, Overall, I still have to give it to Zhuang Li, just because I think though Suarez has the better striking percentage statistically speaking, I am more impressed with Wei Li's ability to keep a high striking percentage against the elite competition that she has fought in championship fights before. And she has been here before. She's done this before. I'm high on her to continue her run in the women's strawweight division. But that leads us to the main event of the night, which is Dricus du Plessis versus Strong Strickland. This is going to be a damn interesting fight. I am going back and forth and on this. The first iteration of this fight, Dricus du Plessis won, and that is the fight that got him the title. But on that fight, I'm gonna be honest. Like I had Sean Strickland winning the fight. Like it went to decision. I believe Sean Strickland won the first 3 rounds, if I remember correctly, of that fight. And I just did not agree with the judge's scorecard on the original fight. And then I know Sean Strickland is going to be very extra motivated for this fight. He usually says that he's not interested in like title fights. He's just interested in fighting in general. He's a true fighter in that sense. But I think the one thing that is kind of making me lean slightly in favor of Sean Strickland is the fact that he's the underdog in this one. And he usually kind of performs better when he is an underdog. So that's one thing. But one thing that I think is going to be very interesting. I would like to see how du Plessis utilizes his grappling game in this. He was able to take out Israel Adesanya with grappling. If this goes to decision, I'm going to have to give it to Strong Strickland. But if it were to go to submission, I'm going to say du Plessis would probably be the one to submit Sean Strickland. But if it were go to knockout, that would definitely be Sean Strickland. So I see 2 events where Sean Strickland could win and 1 event where du Plessis could win. So by that, I'm going to have to go and say that Sean Strickland is going to win this fight. Just by my perception, I very well could be wrong. I am kind of a jinx when it comes to predicting fights, so we'll see. Last week, I went 0 for 4 in predicting fights, so we'll see how I go. I decided to cut it short and only predict 2 fights. Hopefully, I can go 2 for 2, or at least I hope I at least landed on one. I did select the underdogs in both fights, but I like my chances. Like I should at least get 1 fight right this time, but I'll update y'all next week to see if I'm still a jinx.
Yeah, Sean Strickland's one of the ones I'm interested in that fight. Aiden sent me a few videos of him essentially calling out Khamzat Chimaev about his, recent doings and like being entangled with certain dictators and stuff like that. So I'm interested to see, particularly if he wins this fight. I kind of want to see his fight if he's able to win, eventually call it Khamzat Chimaev. So that'll be something I'm interested in seeing. With
yeah.
Hopefully we'll be able to. That'll be one where I'll definitely like try and make an effort to watch tomorrow. That'll be a little difficult because for those of you who don't know, I may be making my return to commentating tomorrow, but we'll see. I'm currently on the backup right now, but if you can, you never know. I may be on the line for college hockey tomorrow for number 4 Providence versus the number 5 Maine Black Bears. So either way, I'm going to the game tomorrow. So that'll be very, very entertaining. I'm looking forward to it. But on to some soccer now. I know we haven't had an update in a few weeks. Chelsea not doing so hot. I mean, we were in second. We were as high as second, but I think we've dropped back down to fourth. The key to the Premier League season is like, you got to be consistent, but kind of the make or break part of the season is what's called the holiday fixtures. It's the game right before Christmas, the game on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, and the game after that. Those statistically, for whatever reason, there's no real rhyme or reason why, but usually those three games are very good indicators on how you're going to perform the rest of the season. Chelsea was second going into those games. They came out the other side at sixth, but since then Chelsea have clawed their way back up to fourth after Man City have dropped some absolute just embarrassing losses. Man City got thrashed by Arsenal 5-1 the other day. Their empire is kind of crumbling, and for Man City. But we're going to talk about Chelsea for a second. Chelsea, like I said, they've kind of run fade on the Conference League. The Conference League is the third tier of European Championship. It's more for these smaller clubs to get experience playing in Europe, kind of for those 7th, 8th, and 9th place teams, just to kind of make them more competitive in their respective leagues. Give them kind of, a sense of how do they shape up around other teams that finish around similar positions in other leagues around Europe. But, eventually when you've got teams like Chelsea who finish below par one season and end up in these really small leagues, they're going to kind of run the table. Currently, Chelsea's the number 1 seed going into knockout play, which is no surprise. But one thing I want to talk about real quickly here is, first of all, over those holiday fixtures, like I said, Chelsea didn't do too hot. They lost 2-1 to rivals Fulham. They collapsed in the final 90 seconds, giving up 2 goals. They lost 2-0 to Ipswich Town. Didn't see that coming in. They tied 1-1 just after the new year with Crystal Palace. I mean, since then, they've been on an all right tear. They've won 3-1 at Wolves, lost 3-1 at Man City. That was the game where Chelsea jumped out really early, and then, once again, second half collapse for us. But most recently, this past Monday, we beat West Ham, crosstown rivals 2-1, which was a nice one. One thing I want to talk about is crumbling of empires, and that is Man City. Man City kind of had their way with the Premier League for 2 years. Much similar to the way for like a couple of years, similar to the way that UConn has. And both, I'm going to make a comparison here, and if I completely whiff, let me know. Man City and UConn, 2 different sports, but they got basketball and the soccer, their respective sports, down to a science. They looked at what is the most efficient way to score. Man City, what they did is they kind of almost sucked all the creativity out of the game, and they played a really risky formation, but with really, really rigid instructions. Not rigid positions, rigid instructions. And it essentially created almost like this machine, if you will. Like this well-oiled machine, but it was like there was no sense of creativity. They were exciting to watch for a year, but it was like they kind of just used this money to build up this team. And it was really kind of hard to watch after a while. And, everyone's going to hate a dynasty, but it wasn't like, American football where, they had to like plot and trade for this. Whereas Manchester City just used like fucking blood money from the Saudis. UConn was the same way, but the thing is, there was beauty in what UConn did. Like, yeah, like I said, they are a team of those quiet runs. UConn has a really complex offense that's really good at generating open shots, which is what Manchester City's offense was. But they sucked a lot of creativity out of it, but not to a point where it wasn't bearable to watch. But like I said, UConn's wasn't really necessarily built around money, it's built around success. But what I'm saying is there are points, and this is a greater point about sports, there are certain teams in sports where it's like you feel like they're not going to be beaten for a while. Like they just have this way of playing where it's like they look unstoppable. Saban's Alabama's, Dan Hurley's UConn for a while. Mm-hmm. Pep Guardiola's Manchester City, they play in such a methodical, like they're almost like a machine. But the cracks in the armor, and my point is teams will eventually catch on to how you play. Teams have figured out how to beat it. Teams have figured out how to beat Dan Hurley's UConn. It's you don't play passive, what do I say? You don't play safe defense. You have to play aggressive defense. You don't just sit back. You don't play good defense and just sit back. You got to play in your face defense. That's kind of how you beat that's kind of the opposite of how you beat Pep Guardiola's defense. Is you sit back and you play just kind of very conservative defense. Like my point here is dynasties like this fall and they fall apart, and partially because the playing field gets leveled. Obviously with basketball, NIL, it's kind of spread the wealth around, and it's similar to the Premier League. Manchester City are amid these financial violations. Other teams are starting to make more money, and they've kind of caught up. And I think I like the direction of the Premier League's heading as a result. I don't have a problem with Man City winning. Like if they were to win the title, that's fine. But this year has been more of kind of like sports are all about pendulum swings. It's like football. You have a few years where running the ball is king. And then passing the ball is king, defenses lighten up. Then the power run comes back because defenses are lighter. Soccer is a similar way. Soccer is kind of swung the way of well-oiled machine. And I don't blame Pep Guardiola. Guardiola spent a lot of years coaching in Germany. And I might have sent you a video about this, Aiden, just talking about how the different styles of play in Europe are. Did I send you that? Where it's like the different countries breakdown. It's like he spent a lot of time in Germany. And if you remember from the video, what did they say about Germany? They like their teams to operate like well-oiled machines. It's every player knows where they need to be at this time, at this place, at this point, and there's not a lot of freedom in it.
Very German.
Very German. But it's very effective. That's why German national teams are so scary to go against. But the thing is, it's systems that take a while to implement. When Germany gets a new coach, they're not very good for a few years because systems like the ones that Guardiola implement take a long time to. And in the Premier League, we're seeing things swing back towards the creativity side. The pendulum's not all the way over towards it's not quite towards the flair that you see in France and Spain. It's not quite that level of flair like you see there. Like if they're going to do something, they're going to do it beautifully. Like if they're going to do something, like they want to look good while winning. And it's something similar to like how they said climate is a big factor in England. England's kind of a melting pot of these styles. But Germany, kind of harsh weather like England, and you want a system where everyone knows it's flexible. It's flexible enough where you can modify it based on weather, but people know where they need to be. And I think that's needed in soccer. But what I liked is things are starting to branch out again in soccer. You're starting to see teams that play possession style, more of the English possession style where it's they try and they hold on to the ball, they kind of break you down, but it's not like Pep Guardiola's where it's like a machine where it's how in math they almost describe functions as like a machine. You put something in, you get something out. I don't mind teams that operate like a machine, but Pep Guardiola's team felt like a math function where it's I'm going to plug an X, I'm going to get my Y. It kind of felt like that. Now, Chelsea wasn't like that. And similar to the NFL, soccer is very much within the respective leagues. Soccer leagues are copycat leagues. When Antonio Conte brought the back three back to the Premier League for the first time in 20 years under Chelsea, what did all the Premier League teams run for 4 years? Back threes. It was all the rage, but then teams got good at stopping it. Now they're back to back fours. Guardiola implemented this kind of machine style of play. It was a back three, but at times he's reinverted the pyramid. It's a book I've talked about on here. It's a book I've read. How soccer formations used to only have 2 or 3 defenders because the old offside rules, just how used to have 1 or 2 defenders based on how the old offside rules. Guardiola found a way to implement that into the modern game. But then teams have just kind of started playing this counter-attacking style English, Brexit ball. The well-oiled machine cannot run if you just hack someone down in the midfield.
Brexit means Brexit.
Yeah, teams have essentially started playing Brexit ball to beat back the German machine, which how English is that? You go Propaganda to beat a German style of play.
Thank you for explaining it in poli-sci terms. I get it.
Poli-sci terms. But not every team's beating them with Brexit ball like kick and chase. Some teams play traditional possession, but that gets really hard because Guardiola teams press high. That's another hallmark of German teams is like a Coach Carter offense. Motherfucker, you gonna run for 90 minutes. You gonna run, you gonna press. If you, the other team, are gonna get the ball out of your own half, you're gonna have to fight for every fucking inch. Very German.
Very German indeed.
like I said, that's my point. It's just like a lot of people were kind of upset that they thought no one would ever beat Manchester City again. It's all a pendulum swing. No one thought we'd ever see the day where Alabama would go 9-3 and fucking lose a bowl game. But I mean, here we are. Like, it was, you never thought you'd see Alabama not make a playoff. So it was kind of an interesting season. No shade to Kalen DeBoer. Like, he did fine, but it's obviously Alabama fans not exactly happy. I mean, like I said, it all comes in waves, and Manchester City season, while they're still in contention for a Champions League spot, they're currently sitting in 6th. They've been as far down as 8th. Like, I'm sorry. I love to be in the mind of a Manchester City fan when they're sitting in 8th, but I will say it's not like they haven't earned it. Manchester City, until recently, has been the little brother of the Manchester United-Manchester City rivalry. Within the last 20 years, they weren't even in the Premier League. They had been relegated to League Two. They were kind of the joke. Like, Manchester United's rival. I mean, the nice thing about English football is no matter what league, no matter how much relegation, rivalries are preserved. It's not like when college football, when teams move conferences, rivalries kind of get, when Pitt left the Big East and West Virginia left the Big East, the backyard brawl was kind of forgotten about until it had been reinstated. But the nice thing about English soccer is you may kind of look at them as a joke, but you still hate them. Like Chelsea's rivals, Fulham. They were down in the championship for years. We still hated the motherfuckers as much as we did when they moved back up. It's similar to how, like, another one of Chelsea's rivals, Millwall. Absolute fucking joke right now. Still hate them. Like, if Chelsea played Millwall tomorrow, like, I know Chelsea would win 6-0, but I still fucking hate them. And that's what I like about England is the rivalries are still preserved even if they've been relegated. Which I will say, Manchester City did earn their 6 years of fame, but I do think it's on the out. I know Guardiola is probably not going to be the Manchester City coach for much longer. He's going through a lot. Now, their struggles this season could be due to the lengthy divorce that their coach is going through. Not making fun of the man, but he is going through a pretty rough divorce where she's getting like half, which is like 150 mil. But
damn,
like I said, not praying on the man's downfall, but that could be the issue. He could just not be thinking clearly. But like we said, these Manchester City Giants, they've been this juggernaut since like 2016. It's been about 10 years. That's about the length of the Patriots dynasty. They were around for 14, 15 years, and they kind of fell off. And I think we're going to see kind of the new cats in town. I think that's going to be probably Arsenal and Liverpool for the next little bit. Manchester United, not going to brag on my dad, but they are not looking good. They were in the relegation zone for a bit this season. They're in need of – people talk about doing rebuilds on NCAA. Someone needs to do a fucking Manchester United rebuild in real life. No hating. And they've got promising young players. The talent is there. They just need to find the right coach. And I think they have it in Ruben Amorim. Like, he's going to take them in the right direction. But it's going to take some time. But
yeah,
that's all I've got to say about soccer. I don't know. There was one other point I wanted to make. I don't know if – you know what? I'll wait till our awards ceremony to make it because it has to do with awards in the NFL Hall of Fame and who I think was snubbed from the NFL Hall of Fame. So I think there is a snub. I'm not going to tell you who it is. I'll read their stats, but I think they were a Hall of Fame snub, in my opinion. This player had 920 receptions, 13,382 receiving yards, and 75 touchdowns. I'm sorry, that's Hall of Fame numbers to me. But we'll touch on it next time. I get why the player they took over this player got in. I get it. The player that got in definitely deserved it, but I do think it is high time this player that I'm talking about gets in. Some of you will know who I'm talking about, but we'll talk about that on the awards section of our show, which will
next episode.
That's next episode. Then that'll The awards series, that'll be a solely awards episode. We'll have our usual episode, and then we'll have our awards episode. Aiden and I have to get busy on these awards. I'll send you a
Yes.
Google Doc, and we can talk about this.
Alrighty.
Awards.
Alrighty.
I'm gonna need to do some stats research, but
Mhm.
you got anything else to add?
Nah, I'm good. I'm good.
I think that'll do it from us here at Tobacco Road and Abroad. Thank you for listening in, and thank you for listening in. We will see you next week with the start of college baseball, our awards ceremony, and so yeah, it'll be exciting. MMA wrap up, maybe a little more soccer, who knows? But dear God, Elliot Avent, please fucking save the NC State season. You're our only hope. You're the only one who consistently makes national championship games. So, all right, but that'll do it with us. Thank you for listening in.